we're going to go from one end of the spectrum to the other. So that was a project that has gotten to at least the first phase of completion, and now we're moving on to a project that's really just now getting kicked off, and that is our clinical diagnostic initiative. And I'm going to introduce Steve Binion, who is the Director of Corporate Regulatory Affairs at Becton Dickinson. And Becton Dickinson also is one of the founding members of MDIC, and Steve has been very involved and active from the very beginning. Steve?
Thanks, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here today on behalf of BD. A couple of quick comments about BD's involvement in MDIC. BD is a founding member of MDIC under the leadership of our CEO, Vince Ferlenza. And Rick Naples, our Senior VP of Regulatory Affairs, Public Policy, is the current board representative for BD. And more importantly, he's the board champion for the clinical diagnostics project. And finally, and last but certainly not least, I'm really happy to announce that we now have a program manager on staff at MDIC in Carolyn Hiller. Let's see. Yep, funny how that works. Okay, so similar to the other programs, and you know, as you might expect, the key difference here in terms of the clinical diagnostics is that over the past several years in discussions at you know, internal to BD and at MDIC gatherings, you know, we just looked around and said, if you take IVDs and diagnostic imaging projects, that's a pretty big chunk of the medtech industry. And is there any potential value, interest, opportunity for engagement in focusing a project under the MDIC umbrella that would be targeted towards clinical diagnostics? So the early returns on that poll were yes, but as Bill indicated, we're still at the very early stages relative to this project, but certainly happy to report some progress today. So recapping 2014, after I put this slide together, I looked at it, and really for me last year, or for this project, last year was really about a series of conversations. We started out basically just a small group of IVD industry members, looked at the basic question, would it make sense to look to develop something under the MDIC umbrella? We followed that up with interviews with FDA, NIH, CMS, and other stakeholders. We did get agreement there. And actually even got to the point of identifying some preliminary concepts. But what was painfully obvious at that point was that there was a need, a critical need for additional industry and member participation and commitment, and that, frankly, up to that point, even through the end of last year, we lacked critical mass. Where are we now in terms of what's happened in the past couple of months? We undertook additional outreach in July of this year with a webinar. We had a good turnout for that, but more importantly, we added several MDIC members to the Clinical Diagnostics Steering Committee. So Abbott Diagnostics, Exponent, ICON, and Medtronic Diabetes Division joined as steering committee members. And as I said earlier, Carolyn joined us on the MDIC staff, and I'm going to turn it over to her now so she can take credit for everything that's happened since she came on board. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you, Steve. as you can see, we've begun to gain some momentum by bringing on a critical mass of interested members and also outside individuals that are not yet members. We've been able to pull together a steering committee, and the steering committee we brought together included not only our members that we had, constituents, but also FDA representatives. And the FDA appointed Giovanna Tezek, who is with the Personalized Medicine in IVD, and Marina Kondratovic, who has extensive experience in clinical trial design within the IVDs. We also looked at rounding out our steering committee by bringing on some content experts. And we were able to bring on board James Boyani, who was a chemist before he went into law. And he currently works with Epstein, Becker and Green, which is a firm that focuses on the life sciences. And he has extensive experience in IVDs and also in the CLIA waiver. Konstantin Gatsonis joined us. He is a tremendous asset to the team. He is the chair of biostatistics at Brown and is a leading authority in the design and analysis of clinical trials of diagnostics and screening, and has wonderful ideas and experience to contribute to the committee. Fred Lasky also joined us, and Fred has been in the IVD industry for over 30 years. And so he brings his experiences to the committee to help round out our discussions. So the committee, as you can see here, is a nice representation of industry within the FDA, and then also the expert advisors. And so we brought the group together 9 days ago to talk about how can we come together and address ways that can be more productive for both the FDA and industry to ultimately get these tests to the patients sooner. And so they focused on 4 key areas. And I'm going to give you just the very, very high level focus because they do need to come together and create the purpose and the scope to bring it back to the steering committee. So one of the areas that they identified was contrived specimens. Gaps exist in how to use them within the approval process. And this was identified both by the FDA and by industry. So I think by clarifying that, that will be very helpful. Another area that came up is incremental improvements in low and moderate risk IVDs. Currently, this can lead to tremendous expense for the corporations to undergo what is necessary for approval. So they often will forego improvements, and as a result, the patients suffer. So we are going to clarify that for them. Within the clinical area, the clinical evidence frameworks and requirements, we need more technical details of what is necessary for the approval, and so the committee is going to work at that. And lastly, electronic health records. Here's a tremendous amount of information that's not very useful in IVDs. And so they're hoping that they can come together and work with the companies to help make it more useful in outcome research. And so that's where we're at. And if you have any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Steve. So.
I just wanted to see if you guys were thinking about bringing in the broader payer community as part of these discussions at some point, because I know that reimbursement is a major issue.
Yeah, short answer, yes. At the kickoff steering committee last week, just circumstances, logistics, we didn't have actually representation from CMS or NIH, who are already MDIC members. And, you know, that question issue with regard to IVDs, you know, came up. I think at this point we're not ignoring it based on the initial technical focus. It's not listed there, but it's certainly one of the critical components. And if you're volunteering, let us know. So. Well, that works too. So, and I guess Carolyn alluded to it, but what we've identified here is a starting list of topics. We felt it was important to come out of last week's meeting with at least something that stuck to the wall, so to speak. We've got that, but there's a lot of additional work to do, and I know from our interviews last year with CMS, payment issues, reimbursement, characterization of IVDs is an enormous issue. Yep. Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, Steve and Carolyn.